Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore, a monthly podcast in which we aim to separate our ghouls from our goblins, our snotlings from our Skaven storm fiends, and our bone splitters from our beastclaw raiders, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber and I know fuck all about Warhammer. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Hi there, hi.
Who also knows fuck all about Warhammer. And my dear brother Darren.
Hello.
Who knows so much about Warhammer, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. After gathering online to slay some vermin in the name of Sigmar, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance. So, recap time. Dhar, last month we looked at gods. Gods.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need an echo for that part.
Gods, mahaha. Ha!
Oh no, we didn't need an echo. We just needed Chris. That was it, right? Okay. So we looked at all the different gods for all the different races. So the elven gods, which I think were split across heaven and the underworld. There was fucking loads of them as well. It was like 20 something, wasn't there?
22 of them, yeah.
22 of them. Why do you need that many gods? We looked at the dwarven gods, including the extraordinarily controversial white dwarf. Let's see if we can get past this without making another vertically challenged joke.
Well, we don't have the track record to support that kind of statement.
No. Moving on. We looked at the greenskins gods, Gork and Mork, and the spider god. I have a note about the spider god. I don't remember the spider god.
Yeah, he's the god of forest goblins.
I don't recall that from last episode, but that might just be me. Then we've got the Maw of the ogre kingdoms. Yeah, that thing was like a toothed asshole in the middle of the desert. We've got Urson. Am I pronouncing that right? The bear god of Kislev.
That's right.
Who the fuck was he? There's so much of this I don't remember. I've taken notes, but I can't remember.
Exactly. This was my point last night. I was like, we spoke about this?
we did an episode last month?
Seriously.
Okay, and then you have the Empire gods, of which are there even more Empire gods than there are Elven gods?
Yeah, but they're all like minor gods. Where the Elven gods, each one of them is a reflection of a facet of the Elven personality. The human gods are just facets of every single individual human's perceptions of the world around them.
Right. Okay. Kind of insignificant gods, like Jeff, the god of biscuits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That kind of Jemima, the whole thing.
Oh, don't get me started on Jemima, the minor, my minor. Do not get me started. Don't even go there.
She should become our patron saint.
I think she already is. J-Dog. J-Money.
J-Dog.
J-Dog. So the Empire gods, they were split between the northern and southern, weren't they? You had the old gods of the north were quite kind of Scandi, weren't they? It was like Ulrich,
yes, yeah,
and Tal and Mor and that sort of thing.
And then Uther, the northern good. You want some Loganberry with your pastry? I don't know. That's how they talk.
No, I don't think it is, Chris, but that's fine. And then the southern, the classic gods, which were more kind of Greek myth, weren't they?
Mediterranean, yeah.
Greco-Roman style gods.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that I learned something last month.
You
I
really did.
I did. I mean, I wrote stuff down. I'm not sure if that counts as learning. But
you missed the one topic which we did cover that I do remember because it was my favourite, the Stromfells. Ben, who do the Stromfells represent?
Is it Sharknado? Sharks?
Yes! That's
yes!
Right. How could we forget?
How could I forget those? Sharks and storms. What a combination. A combination as old as time.
Like strawberries and cream.
Like strawberries and cream. Right, so I think that was pretty much it, wasn't it? It was mainly gods. A lot of gods.
Did Ben pass the test?
For this, yes.
That's not a I'll give him a solid 6.5 out of 10. Ben. I'll give him a solid 6.5. Partial credit.
I mean, he does have a shipwreck of a life, but in this, he's doing quite well.
Mate, it's all about the small wins. It is all about the small wins. I'll take it.
I mean, I'm really trying to impart pure condescending encouragement.
Well, all I'm hearing is encouragement.
Yeah, he did as well as he could.
Patting on the head.
Right, moving on, you bastards. What is the crack this month, Dhar?
What journey are we going on?
I thought this month we just have a quick journey around the Warhammer world, just discussing the empires and kingdoms that exist in the, in quotes, present time. So you're looking at about 5,000 years after the Chaos Gates collapse, the kind of modern context, if you will, for Warhammer.
Just present day Warhammer.
Yeah, in quotes.
Okay.
Cool.
Which ironically was back in the day. Okay. 5,000 years after the polar gates were destroyed by the old ones?
Oh,
No,
Were they
Chris.
Okay. All right.
Come on, Chris.
They were destroyed by the new ones.
Oh, fucking hell.
all right, Ben, you're back in the game.
Ben takes pole position by default once again.
Okay. I mean, I could keep going, but we'll be here all fucking day.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah. No one knows how they were destroyed, but the most likely culprits are the Chaos Gods.
Chris knew that.
Okay.
I can see it in his face.
So there's this kind of ongoing whodunit in the World of Warcraft theme going on. Like, who the heck destroyed those polar gates kind of thing? And maybe one day we'll know when they run out of stories.
Warhammer is essentially just a massive game of Cluedo.
Yeah. Or a soap opera.
A Warhammer Guess Who game. Can you only see the top of the character's head? It's a dwarf.
Hey, does it have lobster arms and 6 titties? It's a weird pantheon demonic thing. No, actually, Chris, it's your mum.
Chris, don't speak about your mum like that.
Sorry, mum.
Do we need a map, Darren? Do we need
He's
a
going to
map?
paint this map into our minds. With verse.
With the power of words.
The power of words. Yeah, I suppose that might be helpful to anyone who doesn't have a book open in front of them. Yeah.
Hold on, fuck everyone else. It's helpful for me. I want to know what you're talking about. Sorry, everyone else. I didn't mean to say that. Love you.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll include a world map in the show notes, but bear in mind that it's pretty much just our world with a kind of thin veneer of fantasy over the top. So the continents are where you would expect them to be. So let's leap straight in, and we'll start with the Empire, or the Empire of Man, as they arrogantly call themselves. The center of the Old World, which is Europe, or analogous with Europe in our own. So it was formed by the alliance of 12 tribes under the leadership of Sigmar, who eventually became the patron god of the Empire, some 2,500 years before present day.
First question. 12 tribes of humans.
That's not a question, Chris. That's just more of a statement.
12 tribes of bearded people.
Okay.
So they're currently under the leadership of the emperor, whose name is spectacularly Karl Franz.
Carl.
Carl.
Emperor Karl.
They ran out of steam after they designed the demons back in episode 2. It's like, oh man, after the 6-titted lobster-handed woman, I am spent. Let's just go with Carl.
Jeff was suspended for a month, and they just, they ran out of steam, didn't they? They were like,
Yeah.
Carl will do. I bet it was Carl who designed Carl.
Yeah, I know what we should call the leader of all men. Me!
Carl, that's fucking brilliant. You're getting a corner office immediately.
And it's got nothing to do with the fact that Carl is the son of the owner of the Warhammer franchise.
Give that man a raise. Carl, I like your I can see big things for you, Carl.
And his followers shall be called the Carlitos. No.
The Carlinites.
Carlito.
So Sigmar was a real person.
Sigmar was a human, yes, who through his great deeds eventually became a demigod and transubstantiated directly into godhood, as his body was never found. He simply walked out of what became Altdorf, which is the capital of the empire, and disappeared, never to be found apart from dreams and prayers and the occasional intervention.
What the fuck? So there's no documented process in how somebody goes from human to demigod. I thought a demigod was like half human, half god, or half god, half another race.
Half pig. Man, bear, pig.
Man, bear, pig. To be clear, he wasn't a demigod. He was a human who, through his deeds, attained godhood. And I think through the collective praise and worship of all the Carlitos, he attained godhood, yeah.
Okay. So it could have actually been two completely separate things. You know, Sigmar left the Empire, just walked out the door one day and expired in the way that humans expire. I don't know, maybe a freak yachting accident, or, you know, he tripped over and fell on his sword or something like that. And then after he died and then nothing happened, but then everybody started to believe in him, and all of that belief coalesced in some other realm and brought him back as a god.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the story of Arthur, which is regrettably mirrored in Bretonnia rather than the Empire. But any sort of historical figure that brings together the population of a certain area so that they can advance culturally is, to all intents and purposes, a figure of worship, a figure of adoration. And I think in Warhammer, that adoration manifested in the warp, and Sigmar the man became Sigmar the god.
Right, okay.
He had his bar mitzvah. And boom. Boy becomes god. Snipped his foreskin off. Now you are godlike.
The prerequisite to becoming any god.
I mean, Jesus Christ, we're like, 20 minutes in and we're straying into anti-Semitic language. I mean...
Anti-Semitic. Uncle Semitic.
Uncle Semitic. Yeah, it's just, you know, cutting off a foreskin's a prerequisite to becoming a god. Sorry, you've got a foreskin? No, I'm sorry, you can't come in.
You're not coming in with that, mate.
Hats off, motherfucker.
So the empire is divided into 12 provinces, and each province is led by an elector count. And it is from this group of electors that the emperor is elected from. But for the vast majority of recent history in Warhammer, they've all come from the Grand Principality of Reichland, which is seen as the good and the great of the Empire. Now, as it stands, the Empire is made up of 12 electoral provinces. There were others, and through history that has changed. The biggest changes, really, were the province of Solent, way down in the kind of southeast of the Empire, nestled in between the World's Edge Mountains and the Grey Mountains. But that was destroyed about 700 years ago by the amazingly named Gorbad Ironclaw.
What was Gorbad Ironclaw?
Gorbad Ironclaw is an orc warlord.
Okay.
Those pesky orcs. Did they wipe the Solans out, or did they kind of become nomadic, or just go, we'll move over here now?
Well, I mean, they massacred the populace, and effectively the province was destroyed in a kind of infrastructural way.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, it was absorbed into the barony of Wizenland, which expanded and took over the Solans areas, and now it's a historical footnote. An interesting thing is each elector count is given a sword, a rune fang, which was handed to Sigmar by the Dwarves when the Empire was formed, when it became ratified, as it were. And the rune fang of Solent is missing, and in fact it is almost welded, bolted to the shield of Gorbad Ironclaw and the descendants that came after him.
So this war chief, this mega boss, this orc war chief, one of the two?
Mega boss really is an Age of Sigmar term, so it's war boss here.
So the war boss, he took this rune fang, this sacred symbol, and took it for himself. He said, "It's mine now."
Yeah.
And that's ever since become part of the Iron Claws branding now.
Yes, exactly right. And I think as the ultimate disc, they don't use it as a weapon. It's mounted on a shield.
What? A kick in the teeth, that is. I'm not even going to use it as a sword.
What do orcs eat?
Anything and everything.
Yeah.
They're like the goat of the Warhammer world.
If you read through all the books that have been written about them, the thing that orcs eat the most is goblins.
Really?
Yeah.
Kind of cannibalistic. The Bone Splitter clan, they like to hunt and conquer big beasts and then drink the bone marrow out of their bones, don't they, to try and absorb their power.
Absolutely. But again, that's an Age of Sigmar thing. The progenitors of the Bone Splitters were the Savage Orcs.
Okay.
Very much the kind of war paint, wooden tattoos, feathers, and big flint axes.
Got it.
Yeah, are they kind of a little bit more unruly and unorganized compared to the other orc tribes then?
In the rules, they start battles in a state of frenzy. So they allow themselves to either be bitten by snakes or spiders to get the venom in, and the venom gives a psychoactive effect, and they go absolutely mental.
That's what Chris does at the start of each podcast recording, isn't it? That's why you
And then I slowly come down into a whirlwind of depression.
A whirlwind of depression.
I'm coming down.
Give me another spider.
Bring that spider over here.
Stick it in my ass. I think I got space on my butt. Make it bite there.
The other areas of note are the Mootland, which is in the kind of eastern side of the Empire, nestled between Stirland and Averland.
There's a lot of nestling.
Yeah, there is a lot of nestling. It's quite nice, quite cozy.
That's a well-buttered sandwich.
Oh, he's back on his ass spiders again.
Stop with your ass spiders.
The funny thing is, right, they weren't actually intended to be taken up the ass originally. They were just meant to be digested normally, but I found this new crazy way of ingesting their venom. And boy, oh boy. Anyway, sorry.
I imagine if you keep talking like this, Chris, we're probably going to get approached by the manufacturers of ass spiders to do a sponsorship ad.
You're the kind of face we want on our branding, Kralin. Those bloodshot eyes.
Ass spiders, I'll do it for free.
Yeah, it's not your face they're interested in.
Just when I needed it the most, it failed me.
She was gorgeous, but my wee man was nae having any of it.
When I see it in a mirror, even I laugh.
Does this sound familiar? Is your performance getting you down? Is your pleasure pump more of a knob goblin than a clam hammer? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. We hear this all the time. Hello, my name is Rafkin Betterbang, and here at Betterbang Magical Enhancements, we specialize in putting the boom back in your womb room. With our patented oils, potions, and tinctures, we'll transform your nurgling into King Dong in a matter of weeks. If longevity is the thorn in your side, look no further than our tried and tested service. We give your tallywhacker the stamina it needs and imbue it with the power of metal and beast by harnessing the winds of Gur and Shimon. Turn your little rumpled foreskin into the heat-seeking moisture missile it was destined to be. Better Bang Magical Enhancements. Come get some.
So nestled between Stirland and Averland is the Moot, which is effectively the Shire. It's where the halflings live. So if you can imagine somewhere between 15th and 17th century Germanic halflings, I want to use the word waddling around the Shire.
That's a good word. Yeah, okay.
So unfortunately for the halflings of the Moot land, they are themselves nestled under the left buttock of Sylvania, which was originally an electoral province. But then it was taken over. I want to see if you can guess who it was taken over by, given that it's called Sylvania.
The families.
Yeah, the miniatures, or figurines, as I like to call them.
Yes, you and nobody else.
Yes, it's the province of furries in Warhammer World. The Sylvania families.
Really?
No, it's vampires, you pricks.
Vampires.
Really? Fucking hell.
Yes, little mini badgers and ferrets. And it's all lovely and chaos never goes there. No, it's fucking vampires.
It's vampires.
Sylvania.
It's Sylvania.
I want to suck your blood.
I'm really glad you rolled it out that way. So specifically, it's the von Karstein line of vampires. And of course, the place is just chock-a-block with necromancers and zombies as well.
Nice. Sounds like a great place to go.
It's a fun, good time. And politically, the current vampire lord, Manfred von Karstein, is technically an elector count and is eligible to vote in the elections of the emperor.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
I love technicalities like that, you know.
Does he vote?
No, largely because up until about 4 or 5 years ago, he was dead. He had been killed at the Battle of Hel Fen about 300 years prior to that, and was basically a bog body until he was reanimated, and a failed attempt to kill him by Gottric and Felix, the famous pair of mercenary heroes.
Wow.
So as I alluded to with the halflings, the Empire really is 16th, 17th century Germany. It is the home to some of the greatest technological marvels. They've got the organ guns, they've got rocket batteries, cannons, they've got the amazingly named Luminarch of Haish, which is a wagon with a multi-lensed magical laser cannon on top of it.
Wow.
Of course.
So there's a lot more projectile weaponry in the old world than I had envisaged.
Ranged weaponry is part and parcel of the Warhammer world. In the games, it can be quite effective, but you need like master ranks of handgunners. You've got the pistoliers, which are lightly armoured nobles who ride straight at the enemy with the gunslinger-style antics and then ride off again before they get stabbed.
I feel they're primitive firearms, like muskets, takes you 5 minutes to load.
Yeah, anything more complex than a cannon or a hand cannon is intrinsically magical in nature. So they do have all the weaponry we would associate with our own ancient history, catapults, ballista, that kind of deal. But they do have gunpowder weapons as well, yeah.
Nice.
So within the 12 provinces of the empire, there are innumerable cities. The most famous are Nuln, where the great cannon forges of the Empire armies are. That's where they make their kind of larger technological advances. You'll also find a lot of dwarves live there because the Empire and the Dwarven kingdoms are allies of the ancient days. You then have Middenheim, which is this iconic city in the Middenland province, and that is a city built on top of a mountain, surrounded by very thick woodland that is riddled with beastmen and chaos worshippers. You've got Talabheim, which is in the easily pronounceable Talabekland, and that is a city that was built inside the crater of a comet hit. And that, in fact, is based on a real city in Germany, Norlingden, I think it's called.
Which is actually built in a crater, is it?
In a crater in Germany, yeah. So Talabheim is second only to Altdorf, which is the capital of the empire. And if you can imagine a kind of Christmas card style German vista overlaid with incredible Gothic horror and magic. So it's where the imperial court is. It's also where all 8 of the colleges of magic are, dotted around the city. The Oxbridge. Yes, it's the Oxbridge of the empire.
Nice.
So all of these cities are what's called city-states. They have their own standing armies, as do the provinces, and each is decked out in a riot of colour. So the Altdorf army, their uniforms are red and blue, quartered or striped. The Reichland army, which is the province directly below Altdorf, is a white or cream. And then, for instance, the Middenheim army is shades of blues and white. So each province and each city has its own colour scheme. And if you've ever actually seen an Empire army on the field or on the table for the war game, they look spectacular.
They look fabulous.
Say what you want about those guys, they turn heads.
They turn heads and then chop them off.
They turn heads right around until they just pop off.
It is a kind of bastion of civilization in the old world, but as I mentioned, it's not without its dark side. There are constant battles against chaos cultists. Mutants are born with increasing frequency, and because it's so heavily forested, there's a lot of beastmen and chaos cultist activity on top of the orc invasions, the dead of Sylvania, angry halflings, chaos dwarfs, that kind of thing.
You know how the 8 colleges of magic are actually in the city of Altdorf? Is Altdorf quite secure? Do they have these mages and wizards and whatnot from these colleges protecting the city using magic?
You find that all of these cities have magic imbued into their walls, into their larger buildings, the very air around them. They are protected magically, but also by breathtaking walls of significant size. And there's a spectacular diorama made for, I think it was made for 7th edition of the Warhammer game, which we'll include an image in the show notes, where they build a section of one of these cities' walls, and it is breathtaking, the amount of detail that they've gone into, but that will give people a good idea.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So just to the east of the Empire is a place called the Wasteland, which used to be called Westerland. It was an imperial province that really has one large city, Marienburg, and that very much is the Low Countries, so Holland, Luxembourg, other places that are small. So around 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, they actually bought their independence from the Empire because they wanted to trade as a free port. And so they've made a fantastic amount of money trading imperial goods with colonies all over the world, but also they have the largest high elf enclave outside of Ulthuan there. And so trade between Marienburg and Lothern is the kind of primary driver for the financing.
And where's Lothern? Is that the capital of...
Yes, that's the capital of Ulthuan.
Ah, okay.
So the kind of geographical boundaries of the Empire are the World's Edge Mountains to the east, the Sea of Claws to the north, and the Grey Mountains to the south. Butting the Wasteland and the Southern Empire is the chivalrous nation of Bretonnia. And that's a feudal kingdom of knights very much in the vein of the Arthurian legends of Britain.
Nice.
It is a nation of dichotomies, split between a very small amount of nobles who hold all the rights, all the power, and all the land, and peasants and serfs who are little more than slaves to their masters. As I said, it is a nation of knights, so you start your journey to knighthood becoming an errant knight who's expected to just fight all the time and learn. You then become a questing knight, so you go off seeking the Lady of the Lake, who is their patron god. And once you find their patron god, you become a Grail Knight, who are these heroic warriors imbued with power, strength, and confidence to face down armies single-handedly.
So in terms of styling then, the Empire is 16th, 17th century, whereas Bretonnia is more like medieval?
Yeah, I'd go for that, yeah. Early medieval, yeah. very much a noble cavalry-driven country. So you're thinking around the kind of French at the Battle of Agincourt, that kind of deal.
Okay, cool. So like the knights and stuff, we would envisage the knights of the Crusades, the Holy Crusades.
More like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, like the kind of squared off helmets with the visors that are like just slits and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's those kinds of knights, but with horses, not guys with coconuts.
How do you know he's a king? Well, he's not covered in shit.
Congratulations, you've just written the opening paragraph of the next Warhammer Armies Bretonnia book.
Excellent.
Rule 1.
Get coconuts.
So it's, as I say, ruled by knights and ruled out of the various cities that you found dotted around there.
Does that make them a militant state or a democracy? Or are they just like a democracy, but they've just got a very substantial military presence?
Yeah, I think that would be a safe bet. It's just a feudal empire. As Ben said, it's the medieval feudal ideals with knights obsessed with honor and glory.
But it's essentially a bunch of kingdoms that are ruled by individual monarchs, and then they have their knights. Is that how you mean?
Well, I'd say there's one monarch, the king, and then under them they have the dukes.
And the backing singers.
So very much in a similar vein to the empire, Bretonnia is made up of 13 dukedoms with names that are all too familiar, like Carcassonne, Couronne, Lyonesse, Paravon, and also the amazing, one would almost say stellar, Artois. Well, that was a joke that fell in its arse.
Nice. Like it.
Wait for laughter. 2, 3. Anyway.
Rethink writing career. So rather than elector counts, they've got dukes in these dukedoms. And so these guys have no authority outside unless bestowed upon them by the king. And their whole purpose in life seems to be to serve the king, and through him, the Lady of the Lake, who is the spirit of Bretonnia, as we discussed last month.
Is that the bitch in the pond?
Man, she wet.
Bitch, you damp.
You moist.
You need to dry yourself off.
Yeah, it should be noted that women play the stereotypical damsel in distress kind of role, unless they are in fact a damsel, who are the priestesses of the Lady of the Lake and the magic users, really the only magic users in Bretonnia.
I was going to say, is that kind of generally the role of females in the whole Warhammer setting? Because, I mean, what we've discussed so far, like, a lot of dudes.
Sausage fest.
Yeah, I mean, given that it's based on 16th and 17th century Europe, females play the role within the Warhammer world. Up until recently, that one would regrettably expect them to play. With recent rewrites, and especially, I think, noted in the 4th edition of the fantasy role-playing game, there's very much a kind of gender equality and cultural equality across the Warhammer setting. Just going back to the Empire, you've got female witch hunters, female mages, the elector count of Nuln, whose name I think was Emmanuel, was a woman. So as originally written, yes, a complete sausage fest. But no, it's now making a lot more progress and a lot more sense in the fantasy setting.
Is it a lot more balanced in the Age of Sigmar? Because that's obviously kind of, in terms of the timeline, a little bit further down the line. Because I know in 40k, for instance, there are a lot more female characters, aren't there? You've got like the Silent Sisterhood. There are female Inquisitors, as far as I understand. Or I might be wrong. Is that right?
There are female Inquisitors. I think in 40k, with one or two exceptions, the character's gender is largely irrelevant because the Imperium of Man is so monolithic that it doesn't care really about individuality. It just grinds you under a kind of...
a single cause.
Yeah, under an oppressive bureaucracy. The exceptions to that are the Silent Sisterhood, where you not only have to be female, but you also have to be an anathema. You have to have no soul.
Yeah, was that a pariah?
Yeah, as we discussed a few episodes ago. The Sisters of Battle, or the Adepta Sororitas, they are the battle nuns of the Imperium of Man.
Just going at you with like rulers. Gonna slap you across the knuckles.
And then the only other gendered faction within the Imperium are the Space Marines, who are all male.
So I guess it's more the Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar IPs are staying true to their, as you say, analogous historical references.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you want me to be effusive? Yes, absolutely, Ben. You've hit that right on the head.
Well done, Ben.
I'll be honest with you guys, that's the part that's making me cut. The uncomfortable silence that went before that, that's not, I will be cutting that out. And in fact, I may even put some canned laughter in there as well.
This episode of Laying Down the Law was filmed in front of a live studio audience. Just two people.
So moving on, so nestled between Bretonnia and the Grey Mountains is the mysterious realm of the Azare, the Wood Elves, known as Loren Forest. And if you recall, those are the elves who refused to return to Ulthuan after the amazingly named War of the Beard.
War of the Beard.
Genuinely love that.
Yeah, and that was their cataclysmic war with the Dwarves. So named because a Dwarven ambassador offended the Elven nobility, and as a punishment, they shaved the Dwarf's beard off. And if you know anything about Dwarves, you don't do that.
Okay, and that was the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of the War of the Beard.
The Archdwarf Franz Ferdinand, yes.
He was shamed and shaved.
He was shame-shaved.
Or just shaved.
Right, okay. So they shaved this poor bastard, they sent him home, and then his mates were like, right, let's go fuck up some elves.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And they had this huge war which decimated both sides and allowed humanity to slip in between the cracks. So these wood elves have lived in Loren Forest for nearly 5,000 years. And as such, given their magical nature, they've bonded with the forest and are able to call out dryads and tree men to their aid when required. They're also incredibly isolationist and wish only to live in peace, unless you disturb them, in which they'll aggressively fight you and kill you. And they have my favourite troop type, which are these war dancers, which are the kind of acrobatic blade masters of elven history, and will just, they fuck shit up.
Like little tree ninjas.
Exactly.
Tringes.
The first time I tried ass spiders, not only did I like it, I loved it. It just gave me a sense of rage I'd never felt before. You know, I was just a peon in the Bone Club's tribe, and that's where my disease started. And before I knew it, I was lost in the disease of ass spider addiction for 30 years. Until enough was enough. I cried to Gork and Mark, please. So my cry led to a phone call. And my life just started changing drastically from there.
Here, at Iron Rock Rehabilitation and Re-Education Center, we treat and heal the underlying causes of ass spider addiction so you can live a healthy and ass spider-free life.
Now I'm a peer recovery coach here at Iron Rock Rehab, helping other orcs take control of their lives, just like I did.
Call 555-340-CURE and end your ass spider dependency now.
Loren Forest itself began as this kind of virginal, untouched woodland, but over time it's become slightly corrupted. So there's this big section of Loren forest called the Witchwood or the Wildwood, which is a dangerous place to go. So if you can imagine all the dark fairy tales in our own world about woods and dark forest, it very much encapsulate that kind of idea.
Right.
You just don't go there.
And the wood elves being kind of isolationist, if you were to stumble into the wood by mistake, would they like go, dude, you're not allowed here, leave? Or would they just kill you?
I think more often than not, they'd just kill you, but I think it can occasionally depend on what you do once you're there. The boundary of the forest isn't the tree line. It is, in fact, a few hundred yards in front of that, and they have marker stones set. So if you cross into that, you're in the realm of the wood elves.
Right.
So if you take any action seen as aggressive, if you try and chop down a tree, if you draw a blade against some attack, whether it's real or not, they'll treat you as a hostile and you'll be riddled with arrows.
Wow. And are those markers, are they magic in nature? Like, do the wood elves know as soon as somebody crosses them? Or are they more there to signify to any person coming in, you are now on our patch, bitch?
Welcome to the realm of the wood elves. Please keep your swords sheathed and your arrows in your quiver, or be fucked up.
Yeah, I think the stones themselves are slightly magical. I think they have such a large number of scouts and allies amongst the tree people and dryads that there's always someone watching. So there are eyes on everything. And that's been a description of anyone that's ever been in there, yeah. Interestingly, Gilles de Breton, who founded Bretonnia, he was able to walk through open-handed, ignoring all these charging beasts and threats that were sent against him. And he was able to walk through, showing that he was pure of intent, and the Bretonnians and Wood Elves formed an alliance that way. But he was the last of several hundred knights that had been sent in over the years, none of which had returned except him.
So their pact exists to today, or to modern times in the Warhammer world?
Yes.
Nice. And so would you often see them fighting together tabletop?
Not really. I think in earlier editions it was more viable. In later editions, it was really an army was what was able to be encapsulated in one book. So you had a Bretonnian army book, a Wood Elf army book, and really it's your own house rules for alliances in that system.
Nice.
So south of Bretonnia, we find Estalia and Tilea, which represent Spain and Italy respectively. And again, you're looking at late medieval through to Renaissance period culture from Spain and Italy. I think we mentioned last month they are Greco-Roman gods with a kind of Renaissance veneer. It's also the site of mercenary companies, so the most significant number of mercenaries come from Tilea. So both countries are populated by passionate people who are very quick to take events. Estalia, they're in a constant state of war with Araby, which is analogous again with the Arabian Peninsula. And so there's constant crusading against the Arabian people. Tilea then is a collection of city-states, very much focused on trade, and will sell things to almost anyone and swindle almost anyone. They're very flamboyant, again, quick to take offense, and Tilea really is the home of the dogs of war, these mercenary companies that hire out to anyone who can afford them. And they've got some spectacular names, like you've got the Marksmen of Miragliano, the Birdmen of Katraza. And if you've ever seen the models for these, or I encourage you to go and look at the models for these, because they are spectacularly ridiculous. These are effectively crossbow men in upside down bicycles with wings.
What the fuck?
Sounds mental. I imagine they have like grand entrances. We are the marksmen of Bring. Dancing in.
Yeah. Okay, so between Estalia and Tilea is an area of land called the Zombie Swamps. Guess what's found there?
Badgers.
Happy things.
No, Skaven.
Oh, really?
It's the home of the Chaos Ratmen. It's the home of the Skaven and their warren city of Skavenblight.
Oh,
What?
Ben's ears just pricked up.
Go on.
This is between Cilia and Tilea,
Estalia and Tilea.
sandwiched between them. It's like the gooch of the area.
How fucking dare you?
Dude, I think that's quite flattering for the nation of rats.
Probably. They love a bit of perineum.
Yeah, to be fair, Skavenblight is the main entrance to the Skaven Under Empire. There is something quite assholic about it.
Assholic.
Assholic. Not assholic.
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 Assholic. Sounds like somebody who just cannot stop drinking assholes.
Hi, I'm Krallen, and I'm an assholic.
It's an assholic. It's where you can't stop using spiders.
It sure is.
So from Skavenblight, you can get to anywhere in the Warhammer world, any continent at all, because they've got tunnels and warrens all over the world. And where you find any major settlement, there'll be an under settlement. So it's where the Under Empire is ruled from, and where the dreaded Council of 13 assemble around the enormous warpstone pillar that has all their rules.
And where's that?
That's in Skavenblight.
That's in Skavenblight, right? Which is under the zombie swamps.
Yes, most of Skavenblight is underground, but the original settlement where the Skaven, in fact, were created still exists above ground, although it's in rodent-based ruinage.
That's
Right,
like the tip of
okay.
the iceberg, but then you go under to the main event. Is that right?
Yes, very much a warren, a massive warren. It's also where the Grey Seers scheme and Clan Scryer construct their kind of warpstone-powered machinery, like the warp fire thrower that we've all enjoyed in Vermintide.
Okay.
So to the west of Tilea and running up the south of the empire lies the Border Princes, which is a collection of small principalities and city-states regularly invaded by beastmen and greenskins and the undead. So it really serves as a buffer between the empire, which is north over the Black Mountains, but it's always well supported by the empire, either through direct intervention, through armies on the march, or paid mercenaries hired from Estalia and Tilea.
So the principalities, they take a big beating, but they get support from the other human empires.
Yes, because it's seen as this very important bottleneck between the kingdoms of men and the empires of greenskins.
Must be a shit place to live. Like, is it analogous with the kind of Soviet buffer zone?
Ex-Yugoslav.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of area, yeah.
Okay. And I like how they've got this NATO-style body that come and save their asses.
I bet ass spiders are rife in those principalities. Because, like, what else are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? You don't want to deal with the reality of your position. Just going to get high.
Just get high, man.
So, north of the Border Princes, but east of the Empire, run the World's Edge Mountain, and that's home to the Karaz Ankor, the Empire of the Dwarves, the great dwarven holes, housing ancient clans, rune masters, the forges and mines of really quite gargantuan size. So very much the Lonely Mountain, Mines of Moria kind of deal, half of which are still populated by dwarves. The other half have fallen to either goblins, night goblins, orcs, or skaven. And there are some quite well-written stories about the horror of tunnel fighting against an endless horde of ratmen that eventually win. So that should make you happy, Ben.
I have mixed feelings about it, I'll be honest. It sounds like a shit way to go. Kind of reminiscent of like the tunnel fighting in World War One, which just sounded horrendous. You know, it's inevitable that, because the dwarves predominantly live underground, don't they?
They do. I mean, they do have a couple of notable exceptions. There are forces that patrol the mountains around the entrances, and those are primarily the rangers. And then you've got actual dwarves of the sky who fly gyrocopters around, tracking enemies and trying to give early warning against invasions.
Right.
So there was a dwarf road, the Great Dwarf Road, that ran underground the entire length of the World's Edge Mountains, which can take you from the tip of Southlands, which would be South Africa in our world, all the way up to the kind of Chaos Wastes or Norska at the north of our world, which would be Scandinavia. And those are regularly patrolled by what's called the Iron Breakers, which are these dwarves head to toe in armour. And the models are spectacular because even the beards are armoured.
The precious beards.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the dwarves were always a race that I admired as well. And there's a lot of parallels in the Warhammer dwarven race as there are in a lot of the other fantasy franchises that I engage with as well. And that whole kind of underground city thing. And in a way, the Skaven, I don't care. Skaven race and their kind of underground network of things. I don't know. There's something about that subterranean kind of infrastructure and ingenuity and engineering.
Are you saying that you respect my Skaven?
Oh, no. No. Far from it.
No, I didn't think you did because you keep mispronouncing their fucking name.
So of the Great Dwarven Holes, there's a few that are worth mentioning here at this time. The first is Barak Var, which is on the coast, and it's the great seaport of the dwarves where their steam-powered juggernauts head out into the seas, protecting dwarven interests around the globe. Now, these are ships, not angry dog rhinos of Khorne. Although I think they would use jugger buff.
I bet a buffs are great. Just great.
I mean,
buffs are great.
Anyone who's serious about preserving the integrity of their armor and weaponry, you don't use anything less.
No, of course.
Especially with the ether-enriched formula.
Yeah. You'd be mad to go for one of those like knockoff brands, those OEM.
Like Bugger Juff. Ugh.
Yeah.
We then have Karak Kadrin, which is the hold of the Dwarven Slayer cult. And if you recall, we mentioned that when dwarves fail something or feel a great sense of shame, they shave themselves down, except for their beard and impressive mohawk, which they dye orange. They throw some blue tattoos all over themselves and try and find a glorious death fighting against trolls, giants, and monsters.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, and their mad orange hair.
That's right. And so the cult of Slayers has its home at Karak Kadrin. And there's a great bit of lore about them where the entrance to Karak Kadrin is this very thin bridge of stone across a huge chasm, and the Slayers, I can't recall whether it's for a laugh or as part of their initiation, will bungee jump using troll guts. So you have these yo-yoing lunatic dwarves along the bridges as you're trying to get across.
That sounds amazing.
Sounds hilarious.
Certainly that element of surprise is good, isn't it? What the fuck is that? Is that a dwarf?
Is that a shaven dwarf?
Why do they shout Jemima as they leap off?
Jemima the minor, my minor.
They have to try and complete that sentence before they hit whatever they're striking.
Yeah.
So the final dwarf hold worth of a mention is the capital, the Everpeak, Karaz Ankor, which is the seat of the that's the seat of High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer and his great book of grudges.
He sounds like a cracking chap.
What's his name?
Thorgrim Grudgebearer.
Thorgrim Grudgebearer.
Do not get on the wrong side of him. He will never let it go. He won't.
I hear you bear a grudge.
I come bearing grudges.
He's constantly accompanied by the Great Dwarven Book of Grudges, which is this enormous tome that they record every slight against every dwarf or dwarfen nation ever. And they constantly go to war to be able to cross these grudges off.
That's amazing.
He needs to get laid. Just chill the fuck out, bro.
Chris, do you know, this whole thing is sounding very familiar to me.
Do you want to cuddle, Ben?
Do you want to cuddle, Chris?
Are we overdue?
If I don't give you a cuddle, am I going to end up going in your book of grudges?
I have a book dedicated to grudges against Ben.
I'm not surprised.
North of the Empire and to the west of the World's Edge Mountains, so we've kind of spiraled around the old world, we come to the great frozen kingdom of Kislev, which is based on, again, 17th, 18th century Poland and Russia. It's led by the Ice Queen, Tsarina Katerin, who oversees the two enormous tribes that make up her followers. So you've got the Gospodar to the south and the Ungol to the north. And she rules them from her great ice palace in the city of Kislev. So this kingdom stands at the very edge of human civilization in the old world. And because it's so far north, the climate means really that only the kind of strong or quick-witted survive, and it's really thanks to them that the old world has yet to be overrun fully by the forces of chaos that constantly flood down from the northern wastes. It should be noted that they do have a real kind of city of horrors. They are called Prague, Praag, and that's where the very kind of stones of the buildings and the roads have mutated, so you'll have human faces come out screaming and then go back in, arms reach out for you. It was the furthest south that the kind of true, in quotes, realm of chaos came down and really decimated the city of Prague.
Wow. So is it a populated city?
People still live there, but it's...
Why?
Because really they've nowhere else to go, and they're so infected, in quotes, with mutations that if they leave, they would simply be killed just because they'd be viewed as corrupted and or worshippers of chaos. There are quite a few cities with kind of dark reputations within the old world. The two most notable after Prague really are Mordheim in the Empire, where an enormous meteorite of warpstone crashed down into the middle of the city.
Oh yeah, and destroyed it.
But it's the setting for one of the best skirmish games Games Workshop ever brought out, which was Mordheim the game.
Huh, nice.
The other city of note is Muzelon in Bretonnia, which was taken over by vampires. So it is very much the city of the dead, or a city of the dead, but it's dead Bretonians. So you've got undead knights followed by kind of peasant soldiers and hordes upon hordes of zombies.
Sounds marvellous.
So what kind of race flag do they fight under? Are they part of the Empire? They're not, are they?
No. Muzelon is its own kind of city-state, its own kind of vampiric undead city-state, and their symbol is a red grail, or the blood grail, or blood chalice. So it's a vampiric warlord who rules the city and the surrounding lands.
Gotcha.
I think that's really a summary of the kind of nations and countries of the old world. I mean, obviously that is a fraction of the information about the nations of the Warhammer world as a whole, and really only a very brief summary of the nations of the old world. But I think perhaps we should look at covering the other nations, the non-human nations, in another episode.
Nice. Yeah, that was amazing. I loved that. And that was like the best geography lesson I've ever had.
I know the old world better than I know my world.
Yeah. I mean, screw my world. It's boring.
Did anything leap out at you?
Yes, the Dwarven realms really intrigued me. Those kind of subterranean but mysterious, vast, cavernous cities. Yeah, I love that kind of vibe. Are the dwarves as much into prospecting for treasure and precious metals in Warhammer as they are in other fantasy franchises? Is that their jam?
Oh yeah, 100%. They are craftsmen and miners first and foremost. And so they do, in the tabletop game, you can field whole regiments of dwarf miners who have got candles on their helmets and run at you with pickaxes and mattocks.
Delightful.
Sounds terrifying.
But then they ping back on their bungee ropes. Boing!
the miner. I really like the sound of Kislev. It sounds so Prussian, cold and hard. And the fact that they're like the kind of the first line of defense, by the sounds of it, that stop or curb the amount of chaos coming down into the
You
the
might
realms
call
of
them
humans.
the meat shields of the old world.
Yeah. But the fact that they're ruled by just a kick-ass ice queen as well, dang, that's some hard living.
She cold.
Oh, you cold.
Oh, you cold. And you wet.
It's a conversation between the ice queen and the lady of the lake. Bitch, you wet. Bitch, you cold.
Nuh-uh.
No, you wet.
Oh, no, she didn't.
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to find out more about the topics we've discussed in this podcast, you can find all the reference articles in the show notes. We'll be back again next month displaying just how little Chris and I know. Until then, churro.
Bye.
Bye.